that we've stemmed the tide of border crossings. And so actually we've seen some of the lowest numbers of border crossings in the last 2 years over the last several months. And I check on that weekly, talk to the White House and others to make sure that that's still the case.
You know, we've always seen 300,000 to 400,000 crossings a year, but to go to nearly 2 million plus every year since Joe Biden took office 3.5 years ago is just phenomenal. To blame it on Abbott. I mean, the citizens of Texas can't take this any longer. Why should they be held responsible to pay the freight on bad Washington, D.C. White House policy?
State Representative Brad Halbrook responding to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker about the ongoing border crisis and an expected surge heading to Chicago ahead of the Democratic National Convention next month. Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for being with us. And a lot to tackle here with the questions all around the border, security of the border, but also with the prospect of getting thousands more migrants in Chicago ahead of the Republican National Convention. Senator Durbin, U.S. senior senator from Illinois, yesterday on the Senate floor, he talked about a hearing ahead of the convention to look at the security failures with the Secret Service. But he also took a moment during his speech on the Senate floor yesterday to be critical of the ongoing possibility of a surge of migrants heading to Chicago ahead of the DNC.
Madam President, you know that you and I share concerns about tens of thousands of people coming to our beloved city of Chicago. We want them to be safe every minute of every day. We want to make certain that the agencies, state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies, are doing the very best job. They have disclosed to both of us their plans, and it looks good on paper. My question is, what did you learn in Butler, Pennsylvania that is now being applied to the original plan to keep Chicago safe? I might also say the threat or promise of Governor Abbott to send thousands of migrants on buses into this convention center in the midst of all of the visitation that's taking place is irresponsible and mean-spirited. These people, and I've spoken to many of them coming off the buses from Texas, they're given promises there of jobs and accommodations and special treatment that just aren't realistic. They're doing what they can to protect their families, but they're doing it at the expense of the government and law enforcement in the region. When we're having the responsibility of a national convention, we can't afford to let such a thing occur without complaining and calling the attention of the Texas governor to the irresponsibility of this action.
So Governor J.B. Pritzker also being asked about this yesterday at an unrelated event, how to handle an expected surge. And he talked about how the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration, he says, has tamped down on the border being porous, and even making a claim that there have been fewer border crossings in the past several weeks than there have been in the past 2 years. But if you look at the data, and we'll pull some of that up here in a bit, the data clearly shows that, well, there's been a substantial increase in the number of border crossers during the Biden administration. Here is Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday.
As you know, we have a partnership with Cook County and with the city of Chicago. There was an awful lot of planning that went into effect back in the early part of this year, and we're excited about the Democratic National Convention coming. We're also excited to have this partnership in place, as you know, and you can go to the City of Chicago's website to see how many beds are currently occupied, how many beds are available, and also that we have a plan for expanding that if necessary. So far, we have not seen the influx that we might have expected, and one of the reasons for that is because despite the fact that Donald Trump told Republicans to walk away from an immigration bill that would have helped us actually secure the border, that the president has nevertheless put in place a series of agreements with countries throughout Central America and North America, including Mexico, to make sure that we've stemmed the tide of border crossings. And so actually we've seen some of the lowest numbers of border crossings in the last 2 years over the last several months. And I check on that weekly, talk to the White House and others to make sure that that's still the case.
So again, the governor says that there have been fewer illegal border crossings in the past few weeks as compared to the past 2 years. Well, State Representative Brad Halbrook, he's actually been to the southern U.S. border. He went there earlier this year and saw firsthand the Biden-Harris border policies that are causing all kinds of alarm, from humanitarian issues and human trafficking and so on to the taxpayer costs, which in the state of Illinois, it's upwards to $1 billion plus and $900 million more for the current fiscal year that just started earlier this month. So here's Halbrook talking about what he's experienced on the ground at the southern U.S. border.
Right. Well, so it was amazing just to talk about that real quickly, the January trip to the border to see exactly what was going on. And again, this is predictable for the Democrats to blame their problems on Republicans every chance they get. But I think, they are going to run out of money eventually. Money does not solve this problem. They talk about the Republicans failed or defeated the border bill, when in fact you can look at the numbers and see almost to the day when Joe Biden took office 3.5 years ago, he removed all of the executive orders, rescinded them or put his own in that allowed traffic to come across the border at nearly 3 to 4 to 5 times the rate of the previous administration. We've always seen 300,000 to 400,000 crossings a year, but to go to nearly 2 million plus every year since Joe Biden took office 3.5 years ago is just phenomenal. To blame it on Abbott. I mean, the citizens of Texas can't take this any longer. Why should they be held responsible to pay the freight on bad Washington, D.C. White House policy? I don't understand it, but it's predictable and understandable of Democrats to say things like this.
And again, Halbrook being asked to react to Governor Pritzker, who was talking about the border, saying that Democrats are getting a handle on it. But again, if you look at the statistics, and this is the article we put out at thecentersquare.com. For nearly 2 years, Chicago's received more than 45,000 non-citizen migrants being transported from the southern U.S. border. And earlier this month, the Republican National Convention, Texas Governor Greg Abbott vowed to continue transporting migrants to sanctuary cities like Chicago that don't enforce federal immigration law. And the governor was, of course, asked about the border, but then he went even further to be asked about it and exactly how they're going to handle the surge.
Well, of course, we have a governor in Texas who cares nothing for the human beings who have crossed the border, who are in his state. He frankly ships them all across the country, including to Chicago, threatened to do it again when he was at the RNC. But we've not seen any evidence of him increasing the numbers that have been sent to the city of Chicago.
So again, hadn't seen that yet, but look at the statistics. Monthly encounters at ports of entry of foreign nationals with no lawful basis to enter increased from nearly 20,000 at the end of the Trump administration to more than 117,000 in June 2024 under the Biden administration. The cost of Abbott transporting migrants from the southern U.S. border to places like Chicago and elsewhere, $148 million it's cost Texas taxpayers. But again, for legal services, housing, school, even non-citizen health care subsidies, the Illinois budget costing taxpayers is $900 million for this fiscal year. And even before that, since August 2022, the cost has gone up above $1 billion. So a lot of that is the subsidies of non-citizen migrants. And clearly there's a lot of things that are costing taxpayers. But what are the solutions? You've got Representative Halbrook laying those out.
Nothing's going to change for the better for these illegal aliens and for Americans until the border is under control. And right now it's absolutely not under control. We saw what Governor Abbott's done, and he was able to tighten some things up. Well, the crossings have just moved further to the west. I think those folks are still coming across the border. They're just coming across in a different place. And that's what happens, right? You have government influence this or that area of life, and it just does something differently somewhere else, right? We tighten up regulations here and something else goes awry, or vice versa. So until, in my view, until Donald Trump is elected president, reinstates these border controls, gets a handle on this thing. I think what Illinoisans and Americans are really most concerned about right now is how these illegal aliens and how they're going to affect elections. And I think that's a real problem. We saw how the Democrats stole the election 3.5 years ago, and the concern is that this is going to even be worse in this year and in the coming year. So I think that's a big concern, and it's just got to get a grip on it, got to get a control on what's going on. Right now, we don't have that.
And it was State Representative Brad Halbrook sharing with us some of his thoughts yesterday in response to Governor Pritzker's comments on how to deal with the expected surge of non-citizen migrants heading to Chicago ahead of the Democratic National Convention. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell each and every weekday morning, waking you up here with Illinois in Focus Daily.